Mic should be up. Yeah, I believe we're good. All right, everybody, this is Alan Devlin here with Atlanta News First at the Atlanta News First Alert Desk, and we are covering a massive amount of storms and damage passing in, coming from the west, crossing over Metro Atlanta, and then going towards the east right now. Many of you probably caught in some of these storms. It's been an absolute mess the last couple of minutes, couple of hours, actually, I should say, when they first started to roll into our area around 3 o'clock today. Since then, it's been an amalgamation of damage and reports, injuries, some deaths confirmed in Alabama. Nothing of that in this area yet as far as deaths goes. We're going to continue to keep our eyes on that as well. We've got reporters right now spread across all over Metro Atlanta and Georgia, South Georgia to be more specific. That's where most of the damage from these storms was. I want to start off right now. I want to see if I can bring in Zach Summers here. Let's see if I can bring him up on screen really quick. Zach, we've got you. We can see you right now. Can you hear me? Beautiful. All right, so Zach, you right now are in Austell, and there's been a lot of damage reported down there in that area. I can see behind you just what we're looking at, what some of those people are dealing with. Your hearts break for these communities. Walk us through, walk our viewers through, many of them coming right off of television with Tracy Hutchins at 7 o'clock, exactly what you're seeing out there in Austell right now.
Well, I can tell you, Austell, in terms of Cobb County, this was the hardest hit area in all of the county. We're along Ivy Log Drive, and this is not too far from where we saw that wall collapse at an auto parts store right at the border of Austell and Lithia Springs. Fortunately, in that situation, there were a handful of people inside that store when storms rolled through, but none of them were hurt. But one side of the building just collapsed to the ground. It was crazy to see. And so we're about less than a mile from there, and we're in this residential neighborhood where this is the scene where we're seeing tree on top of home, on top of home, on top of home. Emergency management, Cobb County Emergency Management, they tell us at least 18 homes in this neighborhood was impacted when storms rolled through. 14 of those homes were hit so bad that the people who live in those homes, they can't stay there tonight. The Red Cross is helping them find a place to stay because the damage was so significant. Cobb County Emergency Management also telling us that they had to conduct a number of rescues because there were, in some instances, people trapped inside their homes. Now, fortunately, there were no significant injuries, nobody hurt in all of this, but just a devastating sight here in Austell. And you know, in this home particular, I was able to speak to the homeowner off camera, and you just feel for him because when he bought this property, he actually had all the trees on his property removed because back in 2017, he says a tree fell on his gutters, and he said, you know what, I'm done. I don't want this to happen again. He tells me he's been talking to his neighbor next door to remove the tree that fell on top of his home tonight, but he can never get his neighbor to budge. So you can just imagine his frustration tonight because this tree, after removing every tree off his property, his neighbor's tree falls on his, and now he's dealing with this. So just an awful scene. We don't know, if this was a tornado or not. Emergency management, they tell us that they're going to be working with the National Weather Service to determine that tomorrow. But it's just an awful situation here in Austell. And again, we were kind of all over Cobb County today, northern Cobb, southern Cobb, and we did see in one instance in Smyrna where a young woman was also dealing with a similar situation. But again, much of Cobb County was spared with the exception of this small area down here in Austell where we don't know if it was a tornado or not, but definitely strong winds. They moved in and they caused a significant amount of damage, but fortunately no injuries here. Alan?
Yeah, Zach, and that is the nature of these storms. They can disappear and reappear just as quickly. It's scary. It's been scary for a lot of our viewers to watch these things travel through and to be so helpless and defenseless. Many of them had to be out on the roadways when this thing really wept through most of Cobb County, where you're standing right now. Talk to me a little bit about your route into that area. You say it was very specific as far as the damage goes. Did you have any trouble on the roadways? Was there power outages? Were roads blocked? What did you see out there?
Well, I would say probably around 2:30, 3 o'clock when this all started to kick off, at least in Cobb County. We were further north. We were actually in like Ackworth. And when we were up there, we were seeing heavy rainfall, and there was some ponding on the roads, but no significant damage. Then we started to, the meteorologist started to talk about the weather, and then they started to get weather reports, and then we started to make our way south, and that's when we came upon the home in Smyrna with the tree down, and there was a young woman and her dog in that situation, and you just felt for her because she almost thought, her dog Marley had died because the tree fell on Marley's bed, and she couldn't hear her, and she couldn't see her because of all the debris, so she thought something was wrong. Fortunately, Marley was just quick and ran to the back of the house, and they both got out, and she's going to be fine. She has insurance, but obviously she's rattled. A first-time homeowner and dealing with something like this, it's unnerving, whether you're a first-time homeowner or not. And so as we made our way down here toward Austell, there really wasn't a lot of damage along the way, and things were moving along. By the time we were making our way down to Austell, the skies had begun to clear. But as we approached that warehouse, that's when we started to see damage along the way. You saw fences on the ground, mangled trees that were split in half, and then we came across that warehouse, and it's just incredible to see that damage, just cinder blocks, bricks, just all littering the ground, and you just see this gaping hole into this warehouse. And then we were notified, of course, of the damage here in this neighborhood, and to hear that 18 homes were impacted, and those are just homes. I will say, as we drove in this neighborhood tonight, we saw trees on vehicles too. So I mean, I imagine when we wake up tomorrow, we're gonna see the full extent of this, but we know at least 18 homes were damaged, 14 so bad that the people can't even stay inside of those homes. So this isn't something that's just going to clear up overnight. These folks will be dealing with this for at least the next couple of days, if not weeks.
Exactly. Zach, thank you so much for providing some perspective for our viewers. It's terrible to hear just how much damage was left there in Cobb County, but we are good to go on your end. Thank you so much for bringing us that report. Make sure you get out of there and stay safe on your way out. All right, so that was, of course, Zach Summers standing in Austell, down in Austell, talking about a little bit of what he's been seeing. As you heard there, he had 18 homes in that one little area damaged by this storm, and that is just one piece of what has been a massive wave of devastation across the state here, spanning all the way from Alabama and right now heading directly into South Carolina, northern Georgia, South Carolina area to our east. And it has been a constant wall. Our weather team's been tracking it all day long. That is why we made today a first alert weather day, just because of how dangerous these storms could have been. Multiple tornadoes touched down in our area, in our viewing area, along with Alabama, and they have just continued to move all the way, again, west to east. The metro area right now in a much better spot than it was, say, 5 o'clock or so, when those tornado warnings and those severe thunderstorm warnings were still up and active. We're going to have a little bit of rain through the rest of the evening, a little bit of rain into tomorrow, but the worst of it is over, thankfully. So right now, here's what I want to do. I want to bring another one of our reporters who's been spread out all over the area. Speaking of the metro, Abby Casoris is right now in DeKalb, which is where, yep, there she is. Abby, can you hear me all right, Abby? All right, let me get a mic check on you one more time for me, please, Abby. I had you muted. That's my bad.
Do take a little bit of time. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, Abby. Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. Walk us through a little bit about what you're seeing out there in DeKalb County, because this is one of the areas that is, of course, much closer to the metro, highly populated. What kind of damage are you experiencing out there?
The damage is definitely spread out. You know, talking with some of the folks over with the DeKalb County EMA services, now they've kind of sent their crews out to different areas. Right where we are, it's right off of Buford Highway. We're at an apartment complex, and this has got to be the most shocking damage. You can see the yellow tape kind of blocking off this area just to keep people safe, but the power lines are down. That tree took them down. People here without power, and there has been damage on the roof, and we are told by some of the management here that there was some damage inside, but fortunately everyone is okay, and that the woman who lives there, she's able to stay with some family overnight, so that is some good news. But we've seen Georgia Power crews come out, take pictures, check up on the power lines. This is going to be something that's going to take a while to clean up. It's a mess because those power lines are really intertwined with some of the branches, and the branches are just mangled. We're just glad that everybody is okay. Now, those EMA crews, they've really been sent all over to different corners of DeKalb County, so we're still, waiting to hear back about how some of that cleanup is going.
Gotcha, Abby. Yeah, it is an absolute mess, and every single time we speak to one of you, you give us more perspective on just how widespread this damage, these storms were. And I'm looking at some of your live images right here, right now. It's incredible to see how quick these things touched down and got out of there just as quickly as they arrived. But what you're showing us is mainly some trees down over roadways, and a lot of people are going to be waking up tomorrow morning trying to go about their normal lives. When you and your photographer drove into the area there in DeKalb, which again, very highly populated, a lot of the busiest roadways in the metro passing right through that area, did you have any trouble getting into DeKalb County? Were there any roadways blocked? And have you seen any crews out and about trying to clean it up to get it ready for what they're hoping will be a normal morning commute tomorrow on Thursday?
Yeah, well, we've seen several road crews as well as some of those power crews that have been working. When we got off of the interstate, smooth sailing in a lot of places, and then other places really hit hard. Now that's flooding damage, that's down to trees, that is losing power. There's a lot of things that people are experiencing right now because of those storms that blew through the area.
Gotcha, Abby. And I accidentally said Thursday is tomorrow. I meant Friday, of course, is tomorrow to end our week out here. And the last question I have for you here before I let you go, what is the morale right now? I know you've been very, very busy bringing us coverage on air, so you might have not had the biggest opportunity to speak to some of the people in that area, some of the neighbors who you're surrounded by right now, who are picking up the pieces after this mess. If you had to describe what the morale is, what the mindset is of the people there in DeKalb County right now who are dealing with this, of course, you can't control Mother Nature, but you can always pray that it doesn't hit you this hard. How would you describe how they're feeling?
Two words. I would say surprised and thankful. Surprised that a storm like this could cause this much damage, but also thankful. Hearing from one of the maintenance workers, he was saying, thank God everyone was okay. And you can see kind of where the base of that tree is. There's two cars as well. It looks like it just kind of made it in the middle. So people are finding their way. Like I said, the woman who lives here was able to find a family member to stay with. They're kind of finding their way through this right now, but they are just thankful, they didn't have this. It could have been, much worse.
Abby Casoris, thank you so much for chatting with us here. I really appreciate your time. Same thing I told to Zach, get out of there safe. Make sure you and your photographer stay away from any of those active power lines or any of those, down trees, anything else that could be any damage or danger to you and the rest of the Atlanta News First group. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Thanks, Alan.
All right, so again, this is something we've been following all day here at Atlanta News First. A ridiculous amount of damage being left across right now 2 states, what could soon be 3 states, rolling as these storms roll into South Carolina. We've got 6 people confirmed dead right now, right across our border over in Alabama. They got hit first, and then those same storms moved into Georgia. And right now, as you know, the darkness settles, it's a lot harder to really view the damage, keep an eye on what's been happening. But I'll tell you, as we continue to move through these reporters here, we continue to get a better idea of just how widespread this damage is. So we've already touched down with Zach Summers in Austell, and we just spoke with Abby Kasoris in DeKalb. I now want to see if we can get to Mrs. Tori Cooper, who right now is down in Griffin, which is pretty much ground zero as far as the damage in our area goes. I want to check in with Tori right now and make sure she can hear me. Tori, can you hear me right now? All right, give me 1 second. We're working on getting your audio up and ready to roll. All right, how about now, Tori? Say something for me.
Testing. Can you hear me, Alan?
Yes, absolutely. We can hear you now, Tori. Thank you so much. So you might have just heard me talking about, Griffin specifically. Our First Alert weather team spoke to how this is probably ground zero when it comes to the amount of damage in the area from this wave of nasty storms that rolled through this afternoon. You right now are at a Hobby Lobby, which has some of the most damage we've seen. Kind of walk our viewers through what you're seeing, some of the reporting you've been doing since you've set foot there.
Absolutely. And Alan, you mentioned that this was really ground zero, and I think that really is the centerpiece of tonight, because I was actually on the ground in Noonan County when that tornado hit there. That was a historic tornado, and some of the images that we saw then are what we are really seeing now on the ground here in Griffin. And I want to paint this picture for all of our viewers tonight. I want to start over here. I took this vantage point so I can really walk you through what we're seeing out here. So this right here used to be a power pole. We want to show you that. And now over here, it's the power lines, but hanging in these power lines, it's the roof to the Hobby Lobby. So I'm going to walk over here. We're on top of this hill because this is where the roof of the Hobby Lobby blew onto the power lines. But I want to pan over here to the right. We lit this Hobby Lobby up from the back side of the building so we could really bring you this vantage point and paint the picture of the exterior damage that's really extensive out here. You can see scattered cinder blocks all on the ground, and you can see where the roof was caved in, and if you listen, you can hear just the waves of water pouring down onto the ground. And inside the building, I saw the same thing, broken pipes pouring water inside. Now I want to walk to the left a little bit more. Joe knows what we're going to show next. It's the left-hand side, the top of the Hobby Lobby. You can see where the roof ripped off from the Hobby Lobby and then blew over here with those strong winds. And then now over here again, this is where that roof is dangling in these power lines. So I really want to show you ground zero over here a little bit more. We're going to walk over here. We really want to bring you this picture because it's not just the Hobby Lobby. I want to show you this house over here across the street. We're going to go under some power lines and be really careful here just so we can show this to you. Give us a moment here, because the front exterior of this house is on the front top of this car, and this entire roadway is shut down. And as you can imagine, because there's down power lines, there's roofing all scattered. Look over here. You can see the roof just on the ground here blocking the roadway. And then now we're going to show you that house we were talking about. Here's the car that was in the front of the house, and you can see the front end of the house that's just right here on the front lawn right next to the car. You can see through where their living room was, and their windows are completely blown out. So this is going to be a hefty cleanup for these residents here. And then over here, we also had some trees that were down on the left-hand side of the street here, and we have some first responders out here redirecting traffic because this entire roadway is shut down. And yeah, we also have some crew members from Hobby Lobby that have been out here in their Hobby Lobby car, and they have been talking with amongst each other. They haven't been speaking with the media, but I did speak to one of the employees earlier who said that no one was hurt. That's the main thing we want to really make sure we're harping on right now. And the last thing I also want to mention is across the street, down the street, is also a Walmart, and we were able to get some images over there. We'll also have that later in our newscast, because there was a car that was flipped over, and we had a chance to speak with that resident as well. So that's just setting the scene for you at ground zero here in Griffin.
All right, Tori. And of course, you just kind of walked us through some of the reporting you've been doing, some of the conversations you've been having. I know a lot of our other reporters have been talking about how shocking it was to get hit by this storm so quickly. It kind of disappeared just as quickly as it appeared. No one could really prepare. The Atlanta News First weather team did their absolute best to let people know this was coming their way, but Mother Nature moves very quickly. You spoke to some of the people impacted. Where you started there was the Hobby Lobby. It got leveled. The roof is gone. The contents inside are greatly damaged, if not a total loss. What did the employees have to say about when that storm ransacked the side of their building there?
So they did say that people were inside, but that no one was hurt. And then the employee that I spoke to was just parked outside in her car. She was pretty devastated looking on. She was just really in disbelief. She's like, I can't say anything right now, but what I can say is that no one was hurt. That's the most important thing. And I'm just out here right now waiting on security to show up because we want to make sure that no one's trying to get into the building and steal any merchandise overnight. So they were really just happy that their coworkers were okay. And then over here, we've seen a car pull up. You're not going to be able to see it most likely unless we go a little bit closer. But there was a Hobby Lobby car that pulled up over here, and there was an employee out here who was on the phone. She was taking some pictures, so I really believe that they were just assessing some of the damage out here. But as you can imagine, everything is pitch black out here. I really want to shine light on that because even though we showed the extensive damage, there's people right now living tonight with no potential running water, electricity. And so those are the essentials that we all take for granted sometimes, but it can happen so quickly, like you mentioned, with a blink of an eye. Now you're at ground zero in Griffin. And this is not far from Metro Atlanta.
It really isn't, Tori. And just some of the images you've been showing us, it's easy to see why our weather team said Griffin was going to be hit so hard out there. Now, of course, Tori Cooper is going to be continuing her reporting through the rest of the night here. Zach and Abby were covering the day side of these storms. We've got Tori, who's going to be live at 9, 10, 11 tonight from Griffin. There's a lot of damage down there in Griffin, so there's a lot to report on. Tori, thank you so much for chatting with us, and we will be checking back in with you soon on WANF at 9, 10, and 11. Thank you.
All right.
All right, so of course, again, that was Miss Tori Cooper down in Griffin, as you just heard. It is a mess out there right now. I want to see if we can start to move and get Rachel Aragon lined up, who is in LaGrange. Where is Josh? Josh. 1 second, guys. I got to grab one of my producers to be able to make that phone call to get Rachel up. Rachel's in LaGrange. She's been out there all afternoon, all evening pretty much, communicating with some blocked roads. There's been some issues with roadways. There's been some issues with trees down. Some train tracks have been blocked, crossing gates, houses, buildings damaged. And that is where we've got Rachel Aragon. I want to see if we can get her up and rolling here in a short little bit. But while we're getting that squared away, and it won't take long at all, I promise you, if you've been with us since we got on the Atlanta News First Alert desk at around 7:30, you've seen our reporters walk us through different areas all over the place. We're all the way down in Troup County with Rachel, where we'll be in a little bit in LaGrange. We are up with DeKalb, where we just were with Abby, over in Austell with Zach, and then down in Griffin with Tori. These storms really seem to hit harder south of Atlanta. That's what we saw when it swiped in from the west, from Alabama for the most part. These same storms now heading eastward toward the coastline through South Carolina. The metro was out of it pretty early on. It was maybe around 5 o'clock when those warnings, those tornado warnings, those thunderstorm warnings started to expire in the metro specifically, and then it moved east on us, and people in the east started getting those blackened skies, those rainstorms. It was scary there for a couple of moments because you never know which direction this kind of stuff can go, right? Whenever you're dealing with severe weather, it is always a toss-up outside of what we can do to predict and tell you what's going to happen and when it's going to happen to the best of our ability. And of course, I'm speaking specifically about our First Alert weather team. Our chief meteorologist, Jennifer Valdez, was on air along with meteorologist Patrick Pete and meteorologist Rodney Bryant for about 3 hours today. Rodney Harris, excuse me, for about 3 hours today, just calculating, projecting, predicting what was going to happen with this storm, where it was going to go. And they did a really good job at explaining how, you know, you might be caught in something like this and you might lose power. You might be moving in between rooms. You might be out on the roadways where you don't have access to a television. That is why you need to download the First Alert Weather app. That is a tool that you can keep in your pocket that will be able to provide you with those warnings, with those system updates, with those notifications while you're on the go, because you never know what's going to happen when it comes to storms like these. We haven't had a system like this pass through Atlanta in a while now, and so you take the time in between to get ready for the next one, because you always know there is going to be a next one. There always will be. So what I've got right now, I've got reporter, Atlanta News First reporter Rachel Aragon lined up. I believe she's down in LaGrange. I'm going to see if we can get her up here. Rachel, can you hear me right now?
Yep, I can hear you, Ellen.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Rachel, so you are in LaGrange. You've been calculating everything down there for a while. You've been reporting for the last several hours. You were there when it was still bright outside. Of course, now it is dark. Talk to me about what you're seeing in the area.
Yeah, despite the severe damage we've seen, Alan, it's eerily quiet. And I say eerily quiet because you would think people would be out, but really so many people, though, staying with family and friends because of what happens to their home. They can no longer stay in their actual residence. You're seeing some damage here swept off in this cul-de-sac off of Nashua Court. But one of the worst homes we're seeing in this area is this home you're seeing right here. Again, you can see the whole roof, in fact, pretty much completely wiped out. As I mentioned earlier, we spoke to one family. They said a family of 4 lived in this home and they took shelter in the basement. They said luckily they were able to get out okay, have since left and now are trying to stay with family or friends tonight. But this is just one example of what homes look like in this cul-de-sac in this area, and how I know that the other homes are also severely damaged. I've seen several other police officers, crews, whatnot, flashing lights, servicing different parts of this whole subdivision. So we know for a good reason that it's not just this cul-de-sac, but several others around this area. Definitely are trying to pick up the pieces and figure out where to go next for the next few weeks.
All right, and Rachel, one of the questions I've been asking all of our reporters here as they've been out in the field covering this is, and you kind of touched on it already, a little bit about morale right now, where these people's minds are going into what could be a very long night of no electricity, a very long night of no heat or no AC, a long night of trying to find somewhere to lay their heads or protect their family from the elements as these homes are destroyed. Have you had the opportunity to have those types of conversations with the people out there in LaGrange so far?
I did. We had several conversations, and every time we come to a situation like this, us reporters, I'm always amazed at how well they're taking it. Because I can tell you, though, Alan, if I actually had to come to my home and it looked like this or saw even remnants half as bad as this, I would not be in the positive disposition they were in. I will tell you that everyone we saw and talked to earlier, I don't know if it was shock or just trying to get through adrenaline about what to do next, but they were just taking it piece by piece and just, I think they still were also in shock. The common theme we heard today was the shock that had happened in January. I think we know there's severe weather comes, tornadoes comes, hurricane comes. There's usually a time period for when that happens. But I think a lot of people were not expecting to have to evacuate their home and sleep elsewhere tonight because of a tornado or severe weather like this coming in the middle of January. So to answer your question, Alan, so much more positive than I would expect, just because, again, if I saw this was my home, I don't know what would go through my mind. But again, a lot of it I think is just survival mode and really just trying to pick up the pieces and figure out what the next few weeks, if not months, will look like.
All right, Rachel Aragon down in LaGrange for us tonight. Rachel, thank you so much. Same thing I've told everybody, make sure you get out of there safe. It is a mess. I believe you're going to be live tonight at 9, 10, and 11, correct? You're nightside with us tonight, right?
Correct, yep.
All right, so
Yep,
in that case,
correct.
everybody,
Thank you.
Rachel is going to be still staying down in LaGrange. She's going to be bringing us more coverage, beginning on WANF TV, on Peachtree TV at 9 and 10, and then back on WANF on CBS at 11 o'clock. So, Rachel, we will see you then. Thank you so much for your continued coverage. And once you do leave LaGrange, make sure you stay safe, you and your photographer stay safe, getting out of that area.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ellen.
Gotcha, Rachel, thank you. All right, so you heard us speaking about just our first alert weather team continuing to cover what has been an absolute mess here in the Atlanta area. I want to bring in Patrick Pete, who knows a lot more about this than I do specifically. You know, Patrick, for this to be your first day on air, pretty much, what a day to kind of start at Atlanta News First. Walk us through how we managed to get something like this in January. Because I heard you and Jen talking about this is not a January type storm. Walk us through that.
Listen, when I stepped outside of the house to go to the gym this morning, I was like, ooh, it's early. And, you know, we were mentioning how warm we were going to be overnight. We started off the morning in the 50s. That was what springboarded us into the upper 60s, low 70s across the state today. So that warmth, which was unseasonably warm. We're talking 10, 15, nearly 20 degrees warmer than average in some places. That served as some of the fuel. The dew points were in the 60s. I always talk about dew points as the measure of the moisture in the air.
Okay.
Whenever you step outside on a day like today and it's just juicy and you can just feel it all around your skin.
You said soupy was the word. Soupy.
Yeah, very soupy. That's energy. I call it gasoline for thunderstorms.
Okay.
So whenever you have that line of storms that's approaching the area and it runs into that gas, what does fire do when you throw gas on it? It explodes. And we saw those thunderstorms literally exploding as they approached our area. And we mentioned this, they were strong already. I mean, we were tracking that cell that was warned as a tornado that we were talking about, showing you all of this damage from, for hours.
Yeah.
It was confirmed tornado warned. That means that we were getting, we showed you that debris ball, the blue images.
Yeah, the
we were
deep
getting
blue.
that signature for hours as it moved through Alabama. And as it got into our area, it weakened a little bit, but then it exploded. And actually we saw some of the strongest readings of wind speeds that we had seen on that line all day. So it was very impressive, it was very intense, and it was very scary because there was a moment whenever Rodney switched to that, it's correlation coefficient, that's the scientific term, but the debris locator, we all kind of collectively were like, wow. Because we all got it, like immediately, like, you know, we knew that this was warned, we knew it was confirmed, we knew there were reports of a large destructive tornado on the ground, but seeing that bright blue let us know that something is going high into the atmosphere. This isn't just something that's a lawn chair or a trash can. This is something that is large enough to cause a very high reflection with radar, because not to get scientific on you, but we have dual pole radars that looks at things in all different directions in the atmosphere. We can see hail, we can see how big and small it is based off of that, and then we can see something like debris in the atmosphere. I mean, we can see birds on radar sometimes.
Technology.
Yeah, so I mean, it's crazy how impressive that signature was, but it's also scary because you know that people are living that.
Exactly.
You know, and we do our best here with our First Alert weather brand to alert you days ahead. And, you know, it may come across like we're repeating it daily, but it's First Alert, First Alert. We don't know if you're catching our morning show at 4:30, at 7, at 5, at 3, at 9. I mean, we're on all day. We don't know which one you're catching. So we want to make sure that you get that message as quick as we can alert you to it. So maybe if you're watching on Thursday, hey, you know what, next Tuesday there's a chance for this. We want to alert you to that so that you can plan and be aware. And we know that everyone didn't experience this damage across the state of Georgia. We have hundreds of thousands of viewers that watch us daily for life-saving information. And we know you all didn't experience it, but think about the folks who did. If it was your cousin, if it was your uncle, if it was your aunt, would you want us to take the extra minutes to warn you and then walk you through it as it's approaching? And that's what we did our best for a few hours this afternoon trying to do. Listen, it's coming down the line. Even before, and this is not a jab because, you know, we all have to do our different roles when it comes to emergency management and communication. But even ahead of the National Weather Service extending those warnings, we're saying, hey, listen, they're gonna extend this. We're seeing, this is a long track situation. It's been doing this for hours. There's not any indication at this point of this weakening. Listen, bunker down, you know, 30, 40, 50 miles down the line, you need to go ahead and be sheltering in place because we expect this to continue. And unfortunately, all of those dynamics were in place today. The energy was there. The wind shifting with height, you know, strong southerly winds that brought in that warm, humid air mass today at the surface, and then that cold front bringing in at the mid-levels a westerly component to the wind. That causes it, when you shift winds with height, that causes a little bit of rotation. So whenever you get that rotational feature here, you're already looking at an atmosphere that there's at least some potential for tornadoes. And that's what our team has been doing earlier this week. We've been saying, hey, listen, there's at least a non-zero threat of tornadoes because there's enough shear out there and there's enough energy, and it's a strong cold front.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we just saw those dynamics continue to increase as we've approached this event. And unfortunately, that's led to some catastrophic damage. We've already heard of unfortunately some loss of life in Alabama, and we're really praying for our neighbors to the south and to the west of the Atlanta metro that have dealt with this, and we're praying for everybody's safety. We have crews that are dispatched all across the region because there are still people who are being rescued from homes.
Still trapped right now at this hour, trying to get out in some of those areas we just showed you guys with all of our reporters who are still out there, still working with these people, still working with emergency management to get the word out and find those who are actually trapped. I want to talk to you because I think you were on air. You referenced a couple of moments there that are worth revisiting with our viewers here. Griffin specifically, when that storm, when you guys on air realized the amount of the strength of that storm as it hit Griffin, walk me through exactly what they experienced in that area, because I think you did an excellent job talking about how, we've been repeating this all week long about this storm. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. 95% of the viewers watching did not have to deal with this damage. But we have to look out for 100%, as you said. And part of that 5% today was Griffin. What did they get hit with? And then how did you guys notice or know that it was going to hit them as hard as it did?
So the crazy thing is, Jen was tracking Austell to the north, and obviously on days like this when everybody's getting something, we have to do our best to, mediate the highest risk that we see, but also remember there are hundreds of thousands of folks that are not there that are experiencing something different. So we don't want to overtell what's happening. So we want to say this is heavy rain, this is strong winds, in the Atlanta metro area. To the south, we're getting rotation. We're getting a strong and literally, I'm looking at my First Alert weather app because I'm standing, across from Jen. Rodney's, looking at not only the chat, but he's also driving the radar for both of us at the same time. So they're zoomed in at a warn cell, and I'm looking at my First Alert weather app, and I see that there's the rotation signature strengthening. So I motioned down for Rodney, and he's like, because we see these brighter, radar has multiple different things that we can see. We can see rain, we can see wind, we can see hail, we can see almost anything that's in the air, essentially. And whenever Rodney's eyes caught that, they blew up. And that's whenever Jen saw it, and it was literally like a 5-second triangle of like, wow. And the next thing we did was query, how strong are those winds? Because those are bright colors. And at that point, I believe we were talking like 130 estimated gate-to-gate wind shear. And we say that a lot. Gate-to-gate wind shear is just a fancy term for we're measuring wind blowing in one direction and wind blowing in an opposite direction. And I call it a couplet because they're close together. That's what causes the warning to be issued by the National Weather Service. They notice that couplet. On an average, weaker, if you want to quantify it as weaker, tornado, you're talking 70, 80 miles per hour gate-to-gate wind shear. Once you start to see 100, 110, 120, 130, that's whenever it's scary. And we were seeing that as it was moving through that area, moving through Griffin specifically. It was scary, because you realize, as scientists, we're nerding out over the fact that we don't see these estimates often. This isn't a regular occurrence. It's not a January occurrence. But at the same time, it's like we're recognizing the gravity of like there are people there.
Someone's living that.
And there are people that are just downwind of that that may or may not know that it's coming. Maybe they don't have the First Alert weather app. So maybe they're in their car and they're not notified by a text or an alert that they're in a zone that is warned. So we're doing our best to communicate, and we're doing our best to get folks to communicate that message for us. Pass that along because it's an elevated conversation. We know that this is on the ground. We know it's confirmed. We're seeing the evidence of, even if this weren't rotating, 120 miles per hour winds, think about going down the interstate at 70 miles per hour and nearly doubling that, and that hitting your house. That hitting a tree.
It's a lot of power.
That hits your house. You know, it's Mother Nature is incredibly powerful and incredibly beautiful, but incredibly scary.
Scary and unpredictable.
Yeah, so it's an interesting position that we're in here. Not only us in the studio, but our reporters that are going out too, because they're going out to tell the stories of these folks that are at a moment that is painful for them. So, you know, prayers for sure for everybody that's involved.
Exactly. And Josh, is that confirmed?
Give it 2 minutes, yes.
Is that confirmed?
Man trapped inside a home in Griffin, yes.
Okay, so right now, as you just heard Josh talking about, he got up on the phone in the newsroom here. Josh Morgan, our operations manager here, managing editor, excuse me, he is working on reports that there's a man right now trapped inside a home in Griffin. That's where Tori Cooper is right now. I'm positive that we're going to be sending Tori to this scene to get more information, more data. But you have to remember, it's been hours since this storm ransacked Griffin.
That was 4:30.
Yeah, it was early.
That was 4:30. We're at 8, almost 8. That was almost 4 hours ago.
Exactly. And this man is just now being found, or we're just now hearing about it. And so who's to say there aren't more? That's why this is such a scary occurrence. And it's dark, and it's harder to find these types of situations to rescue these people that need it. It's not like you can, whip out a cell phone in these instances and just contact somebody. Most of the service, most of the power is down in that
dangerous.
area.
It is dangerous to even go out and try to help your neighbors because we have down trees, we have down power lines, and it's just not safe to get out. You don't know. You can't tell by looking at a downed power line
if it's live or not.
if it's live or not. So it's a very scary situation for the people that are trapped. It's a very scary situation for the first responders, and it's a very scary situation for the other folks that are trying to maneuver their way through what was once their neighborhoods and their homes.
Exactly. Patrick Pete, thank you so much for chatting with us here today. I appreciate it so much. And of course, he just gave us excellent insight into exactly what this storm was and what it continues to be. Even now, as we just learned that there is at least one man trapped inside a home in Griffin, and we are working right now to get more details on that. I know we know about it, emergency management knows about it, and they're already on the way, if not on scene, to get this man out of that home, and they're going to continue to search and look for anybody else that may have been impacted or affected by these storms. No reports of death right now in Georgia in relation to these storms, but we have 6 dead in Alabama confirmed, at least 6 dead right across the border. That's the same system that hit us here, and they had about a 4-hour head start as far as when it hit them versus when it hit us. So if you track it 4 hours, we're going to now get into that area where we have enough time to assess and see where the damage is, who needs help, and of course, what everybody needs to do to begin that long road to recovery. One more reminder, I want you guys to make sure you join us tonight at 9, 10, and 11 o'clock on Peachtree TV and WANF. Myself, Rick Fulbaum, Savannah Louie will be bringing you that coverage. We've got a whole team of reporters out there tonight. Tori Cooper is going to be in Griffin, where we just heard about this man being trapped inside a home, where they are responding to that right now. Rachel Aragon is going to be in LaGrange as well, where a lot of trees down, a lot of damage in LaGrange. And then also we're going to have Patrick Pete, who just joined me here as well, meteorologist Patrick Pete, who is going to be continuing to talk about just the leftovers of this storm, what's behind us on this storms. And I'm going to tell you what here. It looks like we've got some images out of Griffin right now. This is Tori Cooper's camera. You can see Tori right there. They're responding to something. I do not know if this is the gentleman who is trapped inside the home, but I can tell you we're looking at a large active fire. Looks like firefighters are out there. Some ambulances are out there. There's caution tape up. And this is right in that area where that storm touched down and hit hard. Now, they do not know that they're on camera right now, so that's why the camera is jumpy. Tori is obviously working to get stuff confirmed, to figure things out and put this together. And while she's doing that, we're back here communicating with her. I promise you, she's on the phone. You saw her on the phone right there. She's on the phone with our managing editor, Josh Morgan, who just told me 10 minutes ago, as you saw, that there was a man trapped in Griffin. That's how this process works. So right now, they're trying to piece that together down in Griffin. And as soon as Tori gets more information, we're going to have that at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and 11 o'clock. It's 8:15 right now. It's been 4 hours since these storms rolled through, and you still got people trapped in homes with no power, with no service, just trying to get out. I want to thank you guys for joining me here on the Atlanta News First Desk, First Alert Desk. Again, 9, 10, and 11, just 45 minutes from now, we will be back on air. Savannah and Rick will be picking it up at 9 o'clock on Peachtree TV. Much more coverage to come on these storms, how they got here, what they did, and what they left behind. Thank you.